UFC, WWE, and boxing. If you're a fan of all three, this is going to be the best event ever. But if not, I mean, it could be fun. Who knows? Going from a ladder match to a boxing 12-round decision to a UFC brawl could be entertaining, but I have no idea how they're going to structure that event. Like, which one are they going to go to first? Do we start with the Royal Rumble, which I think would be the best way to go, right? Start with, I don't want to say fake fighting because they do have injuries and stuff, but it's scripted fighting, I guess. Do they go to the scripted fighting first and then get to boxing, which is, I guess, more realistic, and then the closest to a simulation of a real fight, which is the UFC. I think for pure entertainment, this could be an amazing event. But if you're only a fan of the UFC and you're a fan of the sport, the competitive nature of it, you're probably not going to be happy with this card at all. Because the WWE is now in fact going to be literally merging with the UFC. So they have the TKO brand, which is the merger, but the events themselves are going to be merged, which makes the UFC and MMA in general feel more like sports entertainment than sport itself. It's always been on a spectrum between sport and entertainment. MMA has been leaning more towards entertainment with every year. And now with this event, it's a whole different level. But if they really want to get the respect from the MMA fans again, they should have thrown in Power Slap. Imagine ending the event with the Concussion League, but this is the closest we can ever get to this fight. Brock Lesnar versus Jon Jones. And with the WWE being involved, I mean, they could probably do steroids, you know? Lesnar and Jones juiced out of their minds would actually be pretty sick. And this whole mega event is supposed to take place in Saudi Arabia if it does get finalized. Turki Al-Sheikh is literally taking over combat sports and sports entertainment. This guy's putting on like the biggest boxing events. He sponsored the Sphere card. I don't know too much about his involvement with the WWE, but he might be the most powerful man when it comes to combat sports at this point. And now there could be questions like, is it going to be a successful card? Can the WWE fans and the UFC fans mesh together to all watch this big event? I think there is a crossover, especially these days. The UFC's been catering more to entertainment. It's going to draw in a lot more of that audience, and it could be big for the UFC if there is any big boxer on that event, or even a big WWE superstar, because the UFC is, I would think, the smallest of them, right? I think it's smaller than boxing, smaller than WWE for sure. And the reason why I say UFC instead of MMA is because, let's be honest at this point, man. As much as we like competition between the organizations, the UFC is MMA now. I mean, it used to be a joke of the uneducated whenever they confused the sport with one organization, but now that one organization has taken over the entire sport. But what about the PFL and ONE and Ryzen? Like, bro, they're tanking. The PFL's tanking. ONE Championship is not doing great. They're not even putting on events as much anymore. I don't know how Ryzen's doing, but they also don't put on events all the time. The UFC at this point is MMA. So if they could get more fans from those bigger sports or bigger organizations to watch an entertaining UFC fight, it could bring more fans into the sport. In a way, they're all going to be competing with each other. Who could put on the best show? Each of those sports are going to try and draw in the most audience from that event. So the UFC needs to beat boxing and WWE, right? They need to take it home. But the UFC would have to put on a big fight. So maybe Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall or something like that. But Islam versus Ilya is the highest skilled fight the UFC could put on right now. I can't wait when Islam and Ilya, they come out in the first round, both opposite stances. Ilya's feinting in while Islam is measuring distance off his jab, throwing out a few kicks to the body. Ilya looks to explode in with his combinations as Islam moves away and throws that check right hook, tries to line up the left straight on the back foot. And then all of a sudden, Stone Cold Steve Austin comes in with a steel chair to the face, gets the pin and becomes the UFC lightweight champion somehow. And then the Edge cashes in the money in the bank, sprinting to the cage, and him and Stone Cold get into a power slap contest for the TKO belt. As ridiculous as that sounds, I would not even be surprised if that's the event they put on. I'm gonna be honest, I'm alright with this. I mean, they were gonna do events like this regardless at some point, and I've kind of just like accepted that the UFC is still following this direction, becoming more like pro wrestling over the years, and yeah, what happened to our sport, man? And people swore that this was better than what it used to be like. But yeah, I'm all in for it, I guess. Sure, why not? But more so for the UFC and boxing. I don't care about pro wrestling, dude. I haven't watched the WWE since like Evolution with Triple H and Batista and Randy Orton and those guys. But if they could put on high-level boxing matches, like having Canelo versus David Benitez, then Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria on the same card, bro, that would be insane. Like, that would be amazing. Mixing in pro wrestling with it, it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's watering down the event, it's just different. You know, it's not the same kind of thing. Like, it's impressive what those guys are able to do in the ring. It's very difficult. They get injured. Those guys are athletic, and they know how to put on a show for the fans. A lot of those guys are big personalities and very charismatic, which is the reason why a lot of the UFC fighters are copying what they do. When they talk on the mic and when they try to do their entrances and stuff like that, it becomes very pro wrestling. And this has been a thing for a long time, too. But to be mixed in the same event, the competition, like the actual fight itself, is different. You know, it's not the same thing. And at one point, is the UFC literally going to start introducing tag team matches? And because other MMA organizations have already done that. They've done like battle royale matches for MMA. Those things are crazy. And Russia, of course, is all in on that. Russia's even doing like phone booth fighting. Like they're literally in a phone booth fighting each other. And they just had a fight in the sky. I'm not even joking. They had like a boxing match on a hot air balloon while it was in the sky. And I wouldn't even be surprised the UFC starts doing stuff like that. You know, Royal Rumbles, like just go crazy with the whole thing. But yeah, what do you guys think about the mega combat sports event in Saudi Arabia promoted by TKO?